Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. All right, folks, here we go. 59 of the greatest NFL teams ever are going to be lined up, suited up, and ready to throw down in a single elimination tournament for the title of the greatest Super Bowl champion of all time. Have you guys ever sat around and debated with your buddies? What team is the best of all time? Is it the 85 Bears? Maybe it's one of Mahomes' Chiefs led teams. Maybe it's one of Brady's Pats teams, or it could be even Montana's dynasty. Well, good, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this series. We're not just going to be doing highlight reels and nostalgia. We're going to be simulating every matchup with real rosters, real stats, and also real playbooks. So 59 champs are going to enter, but only one is going to walk away. So let's take a look at this video. All right, so here's the deal. This is how the madness is going to work. We've taken all the 59 Super Bowl champions, every single one since Vince Lombardi first raised that shiny trophy back at Super Bowl I, and we've ranked them all. So not with opinions, not with gut feelings, and definitely not with, your Uncle Rico and what he remembers from the 1970s. Nope, we use something called SRS, and that's a simple rating system. It's a fancy way of saying how good you were and how good were the teams that you played. So think of it as a stat that cuts through the fluff. And then we also got the stat from profootballreference.com, and we'll touch on it a little bit more in the next slide. But then after that, we throw all these games into one giant single elimination tournament where it's win in advance or lose and go home. And these games will be simulated using whatifsports.com, which uses real rosters, real stats, and then matchups to figure out who's got the real juice, right? And at the end, one team is going to stand alone. We're going to have one true champion of champions. So no debates, just the data. And if you're into this kind of stuff and you want to see this done for other sports, I'm going to need you guys to hit that like button. And I also want you to let us know down in the comments section below what sport you'd like us to cover next, or maybe even do this again with NFL, but maybe add in that 60th champion at the end of the year. So make sure to let us know down below in the comments. All right, so let's touch on the SRS just very briefly. So SRS is going to stand for the simple rating system. We've already touched on that. And it's combining teams' point differential, so how much they beat people by, with the strength of schedule, how tough those teams actually were. So that's how we can compare teams like the 1989 Niners to maybe the 2013 Seahawks, or even the 1972 Dolphins to some of the Mahomes-led Chiefs teams as of late. So it's not perfect, but it's a way better than just counting rings, right? And this is coming straight from ProFootballReference.com. And the higher that your SRS is, the more dominant that your season was. So it's just as simple as that. Okay, so here's the setup. We've got 59 Super Bowl champions, and they're going to battle it out in a good old fashioned single elimination bracket. You lose once and you're gone, right? So that means that the top five teams, based on the SRS rating, are going to get a first round bye as a reward for being, absolute monsters during their title season. And don't worry, we're going to reveal the brackets in just a few slides. Uh, every game is going to be played once, so no best of series, no let's run it back nonsense, none of that. You get one shot, just like the real Super Bowl. And here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. We're simming every matchup using whatifsports.com, which is actually like Madden, but on a spreadsheet. So it actually knows what it's doing in a way, but it uses real rosters, it uses real stats, and it actually uses some of those real playbooks that the teams have used. So the 85 Bears will probably blitz like the Buddy Ryan is calling the shots, and then even the greatest show on turf will probably spread you out like it's still 1999. And to keep things a little bit fair or a little bit more on an equal playing field, every single game is going to be played at a neutral site. And that neutral site is going to be the Cotton Bowl. It's going to say 70 degrees, zero wind, no rain, and real grass under everyone's cleats. So none of that turf crap. That means no home field advantage, no snow games, no, well, Brady had the wind at his back, all those stupid arguments. We're isolating the teams and not the conditions. So once each game is played, we'll break it down for you, using stats, key moments, and who moves on. None of the fluff, just the results. But let's move on to the bracket now and see how that has panned out. All right, folks, let's head to the north side of the bracket, and this is going to be a slugfest here. You can see this bracket is stacked up with firepower, throwback defenses, and iconic quarterbacks, and more swagger than a sideline celebration in the early 90s. So, first off, we're going to start off with the number one overall seed in the whole entire tournament, It's going to be the 1991 Washington Redskins. And I know, ladies and gentlemen, I called them the Redskins, and some of you are going to freak out, but that was their name at the time, and that's the name that I'm going to use. If you don't like that, there's thousands upon thousands of political channels here on YouTube that you can switch to. So sorry for that in advance. But these guys didn't just win games, the 1991 Redskins, they basically bulldozed teams, right? Joe Gibbs had them running like a machine, balanced, brutal, and surgical. They'll be waiting to see who survives in that opening bloodbath that you're going to see between the 2002 Bucks and the 1976 Raiders. So let's pause here for a second. Tampa's 2002 squad might have had the best defense of the 2000s, right? That defense was unbelievable. But that 1976 Raiders with pure outlaw football, you had Jack Tatum, Snake Stabler, and that classic silver and black attitude. So if you like violence with your football, this one is a good matchup. Then we've got the 2009 Saints in the 2015 Broncos. So that's that Drew Brees fireworks versus Peyton Manning's last ride carried on the back of about a Von Miller and that elite defense. Total contrast in styles here, and this one could get a little bit sneaky. Could be a revenge game for Peyton Manning for losing that Super Bowl in 2009 to the New Orleans Saints. Now we're going to slide on to that 2010 Green Bay versus that 2021 Rams matchup. So that's Rodgers in his prime versus Stafford in the Cinderella run versus, when he had McVay. This could be a track meet or it could be a pick fest depending on which version of each quarterback shows up. And don't sleep on the next one, right? This is the 84 Niners. So you got peak Montana, pre-dynasty saturation, right? Up against that 2007 Giants team who lived to ruin historic seasons. If Eli gets hot, anything can happen, and that's something that you need to think about. Next, let's jump over to that 1993 Cowboys team versus the 1982 Washington Redskins. So you've got Jimmy Johnson's young empire just taking off versus a gutsy, grinded out strike season squad led by Joe Theismann. So it's going to be a total clash of eras and styles. And then we've got a dogfight. And the dogfight that we're talking about is that 2017 Eagles team versus that 1990 Giants team. We're talking about those Philly fans. They might love this one, but LT and Bill Parcells are waiting with cold eyes and mean intentions. They got that smash mouth vibes ready to come forward against Philadelphia. Finally, though, in this bracket, to round off the bracket, it's going to be the 2004 Patriots versus the 2012 Ravens. And that's a young Tom Brady, but I still think this is one of the best Patriots teams. Like, if you were to have me pick which team was the best of the 6 Super Bowl teams, I think it's the '04 Pats. And you got to remember that Tom Brady, that's when I think he was becoming elite Tom Brady. And they're going to be facing off against a team with Joe Flacco with that miracle run. Remember that miracle run back in 2012? So a little bit of bite there with that Baltimore defense too. So it's going to be that Belichick versus Harbaugh. That's always a great matchup. So we're ready for that. So that's the North region. It's physical, it's gritty, and it's got some of the best coaching minds and defenses this tournament has to offer. Now, whoever survives this bracket might come out limping, but they'll be battle tested, no question about that. So let's move on to the next side of the bracket. All right, now we're going to slide over to the West. And this is where the West is actually connected to the North. So the last slide that you've seen, these are the two brackets on the same side. I guess the left side, if you want to call it. And we've got some dynasties here, right? Some heartbreakers and enough Super Bowl rings in the quadrant to probably blind you if they lit up in the right, or they stood in the sun in the right direction. The 1975 Steelers are going to sit comfy at that 4 seed, and they're going to be in that first round bye seat. So let's be honest, this team didn't play football. They basically broke people, right? They had Bradshaw, Lambert, Franco Harris. This is the prime steel curtain, right? Whoever wins this region is going to have to pass through basically this tough team, and that's going to be a hard thing to follow. To earn that shot, though, first is the 2019 Chiefs versus the 1968 Jets. And, it's going to be Broadway Joe and the whole guaranteed thing, but this isn't going to be a press conference, right? It's going to basically be a track meet. And can they keep up with Mahomes? And he just doesn't run out of gas, so I don't know if that team will be. But let's jump over to the 1992 Cowboys taking on the 2022 Chiefs, and that's Aikman, Emmett, and the Great Wall of Dallas defense versus Andy Reid's Ferrari offense. So you got the two dynasties from different eras, and only one gets to live. Let's move on to the next one, where you're gonna get a 1994 49ers versus 2001 Patriots. You've got peak Steve Young versus and peak Jerry Rice, and an absolute juggernaut of a team facing off against a young Tom Brady and a Patriots team that started a dynasty with smoke, mirrors, and then Adam Vinatieri's foot. So I don't necessarily know if that team can keep up with the 94 49ers, but a pretty decent matchup there. And then we got the original champs from Kansas City, and that's going to be the 1969 Chiefs with Hank Stram and Len Dawson. They're going to be going toe to toe with the 1980 Raiders, one of the most unpredictable, aggressive teams of their era, and that's going to be power football on both sides. Now let's move on to a classic throwback alert. We're talking about the 1971 Cowboys versus the 74 Steelers. It's going to be pre-dynasty Pittsburgh versus Tom Landry's early Cowboy crew. Think both these squads were still figuring it out back then, but they weren't far from greatness. They obviously won the Super Bowl, and the winner probably earns a rematch with history. And this one's going to be fun, this last one. So 2016 Patriots versus the 1977 Cowboys. This is Brady in his 28-3 comeback season from that Super Bowl going against the Doomsday defense, right? So if you like chess matches and sideline tantrums, Belichick versus Landry, that's going to be straight up art for you. And waiting in the wins or waiting for the winner is going to be the 1966 Packers. This is Lombardi, Star, the foundation of NFL royalty, basically. And can they still hang with the modern athletes? That's probably going to be the big question in this tournament. If some of those older teams can keep up with some of these teams that have just won and with their high flying offenses. Well, the West is a war zone, old school grit versus that new school speed. But there's going to be no easy outs here, and that's the only guarantee that we can make for this side of the bracket. Now let's jump to the East region, and this is where legends collide, dynasties double up, and some of the most unpredictable teams in the Super Bowl history are ready to stir the pot. Talking about the big dogs here in the 1985 Bears, they're our number 2 overall seed, and let's be honest, one of the most terrifying teams ever assembled. Defense so good they made quarterbacks, basically cry. Walter Payton, the fridge, the Super Bowl shuffle, they've got to buy, and they'll be waiting for the winner of, get this, the 1998 Broncos and the 1978 Steelers. Now that matchup is no joke. You got Elway and Terrell Davis in full domination mode versus the Steel Curtain in the post Bradshaw bloom. It's like comparing a battering ram to a wrecking ball. Either way, somebody's going to get flattened. Then we got the 1997 Broncos, a little less dominant than the 98 team, but still nasty nonetheless, right? Taking on that 2006 Colts team, who finally broke through and got Peyton his first ring. And if this turns into a shootout, Manning's got the edge. And if it turns into a grind, Mile High might roll in this one. Now, this one, we're talking about the Patriots fans. You might want to look away because one team's going to advance and one's going to have to go home. And that's the 2014 Pats versus the 2018 Pats. That's Pete Gronk, Edelman, and the Malcolm Butler goal line pick squad facing the more rugged, run-heavy team that wore out the Rams. So Tom Brady versus Tom Brady and Bill Belichick versus Bill Belichick. It should be interesting. But we're going to follow up with the 1979 Steelers. Still a nasty team taking on the 2023 Chiefs, who basically play football like they've unlocked cheat codes, right? Mahomes is a magician, but Pittsburgh hits like a sledgehammer. That's going to be huge, a huge matchup, I think. But that's one of Kansas City's worst teams. They're actually ranked 55th in SRS compared to every Super Bowl winner, so not the greatest. So move on to the 95 Cowboys versus the 03 Patriots. That's the Jimmy Johnson machine at full tilt versus Brady's second title team when the defense was still elite and the offense was, kind of finding itself. Now we're going to move to the 1967 Packers facing the 2017 Eagles. That's going to be Vince Lombardi versus Nick Foles' postseason miracle. Bart Starr and his smash mouth simplicity versus the RPOs, the trick plays, the Philly. I'm not saying it's going to be that close, but it could get a little weird in this football game. And then we're going to round out the tournament here, or this bracket, this part of the bracket. Sorry about that. With the 2013 Seahawks versus the 2011 Giants. You're talking about the Legion of Boom, Marshawn Lynch, Pete Carroll's defense at DEFCON 1 against Eli, who somehow becomes Joe Montana when the playoffs roll around. Can Russ cook also is another question, or does Eli do it again? So this East bracket, sneaky good, right? There's balance, chaos, and more recent champions than you can shake a foam finger at, right? It's old school versus new school, and we're going to find out who still has it. All right, folks, last but definitely not least, we head down to the South region, and in this one, it's going to be a beautiful mess of dynasties, defenses, and a couple of heavyweight matchups that might decide who limps into the Final Four. We're going to start with the 1996 Packers, who come in with the 3 seed in a first round bye. You got Brett Favre was an absolute gunslinger that year, MVP form, a top tier defense, and then Desmond Howard flipping the field on every kick return. That team could win basically shootouts and slugfests, and they'll wait for the carnage to unfold below in this matchup, the 1986 Giants versus the 2000 Ravens. And this right here, this is defense P word, right? It's LT and the Big Blue Wrecking Crew up against the big Ray Lewis in a unit that literally carried Trent Dilfer to a ring. The first to 13 could actually win this game, and I'm not even joking around about that. Now we're going to jump over to some 49er on 49er crime. We have the 1989 Niners versus the 1981 Niners. And this is a straight up civil war, right? It's Montana versus Montana, Walsh versus Walsh. The more explosive late 80s version with Rice in his prime takes on the original The Catch, and I use that in quotation, squad. Either way, Jerry Rice advances. That's actually a lie because he wasn't on the 80s team. But it's guaranteed that a 49ers team will move on in that matchup. Now, let's move on to the 1972 Dolphins versus the 1988 Niners. And the 72 Finns are the only undefeated champs ever, but they weren't flashy. Meanwhile, the 1988 Niners had a little magic left in that tank, right? They had young Rice, a veteran Montana, and an offense that could cook. This one's going to be a classic power versus polish battle. Now we're going to jump to that 1999 Rams versus the 1987 Washington Redskins team. It's the greatest show on turf, faces off against one of the most efficient offensive squads of the 80s. Can Kurt Warner light it up, or does Doug Williams keep dropping bombs like it's still that Super Bowl? So here comes a fun one now with the 2008 Steelers versus the 1983 Raiders. Big Ben is going to be suffocating that suffocating defense against a wild card Raiders team that got hot and never cooled off. And I think Marcus Allen is still running from that 1974. That 74-yard run that he had that year. Next up, we're going to move on to the 2020 Buccaneers versus the 2005 Steelers. That's that Brady's We're Not Done Yet comeback tour versus that young, physical Steelers that beat the Seahawks and didn't care what the script was supposed to be that season. Finally, we're going to round off the whole tournament with the 1973 Dolphins versus the 1970 Colts. And these teams don't get the headlines, but they're tough as nails, right? Both post perfection Miami still knew how to grind you down. And that Colts squad, they were leftovers from that 1960s stacked era, right? And still got it done. So this region basically has it all. It has the old school grit, West Coast mastery, and championship defenses stacked on top of each other. The South bracket isn't just about flash; it's going to be about pedigree, right? And whoever comes out, they're going to be limping, but they're going to be legit. All right, let's talk about how we're running this thing now. We're not just tossing these matchups at you and calling it a day. We've got a game plan. In the early rounds, we're going to hit you with recap style breakdowns. So, multiple games in each video. Quick, clean, punchy, you'll get scores, standout players, and maybe a surprise or two. We're going to keep it fast. Uh, and that's because, 59 teams just don't sort themselves out, right? But once we get deeper, we're talking about Sweet 16, maybe Elite 8, even the Final Four, we start slowing things down and we're going to zoom in. Those matchups are going to be more about the full treatment. 1 to 2 games per video, maybe even some previews with advanced metrics, SRS breakdowns, and yeah, maybe even some hypothetical betting lines. So we're going to be covering key stats, pivotal moments, upsets throughout. But as the tournament heats up, we're going to go even deeper. So think film room level analysis minus the clicker and the whiteboard. And we're even going to be cooking up some special recap episode as well to close the series. So one that might feature a few bonus goodies like the tournament MVP, maybe the best offense, best defense, biggest upset, or maybe even the most embarrassing blowout. So this isn't just about crowning a champ. It's going to be about telling the story of who survived the gauntlet. And trust me, it's going to be fun to watch. All right, and there you guys have it. You're going to have 59 champions, 4 loaded brackets, and 1 wild ride coming your way. The first round is going to kick off in about 4 to 7 days, and it's going to be fast, fun, and a little bit chaotic, just how we like it here at Grandstand Sports Data. It's going to be upsets, blowouts, heartbreaks, and maybe a little surprise from your personal dark horse. So if you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single matchup. We want you guys to drop your pick to win it all down in the comments and share this with one friend who wants to get in on the action here. So this is Grandstand Sports Data, and the greatest tournament in Super Bowl history is about to well, to begin or kick off, however you want to say it. And we'll see you guys in the next one.